Hey horror fans, welcome back to another video on the Terror Talk channel where I give commentary on creepy stories and conspiracy theories. The music you hear I composed myself. If you're struggling financially like a lot of people are, check the pinned comment after watching. I have something that will help you out a lot. Now, let's get into it and have some fun.
I'm a single guy in my mid 30s. This happened a few years ago during a somewhat depressing period in my life. I had just broken up with my girlfriend of 5 years, the girl I thought I'd be marrying one day and starting a family with. It's safe to say I was pretty lost at that time. I can't lie, the psychological damage of the breakup was pretty severe.
Have you ever been with someone that long and then all of a sudden it doesn't work out? That sounds pretty intense, huh? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if you have any creepy experiences related to a breakup or some really creepy psycho breakup that happened, because I really love those types of stories actually. Yeah, let me know in the comments below if you've ever experienced anything like that.
I spent entire weeks sulking and forgetting to take care of myself. I'd wake up, talk to no one, go to work, talk to no one, and come home to spend the rest of the day in bed. The weekends were even worse. I'd forget to eat and I wouldn't leave the house. I'd binge watch movie after mind numbing movie, not even realizing what I was watching half the time. But enough with the sob story. I'm much better now, although I still often think about the life I could have had if things went differently. Anyway, it was a Saturday night. I was slumped on the couch, barely moving except to hit play on another random movie. I couldn't even tell you what it was. Just another mindless action flick I'd forget about by the time it ended. For context, I was in my room, which is on the second floor of my house. I have a couch and a TV in my bedroom, so I typically never watch TV anywhere else but there. At one point, I looked down at my phone. It was a few minutes after 9 p.m. I remember that distinctly because my mom was calling me for like the fourth time that day. I didn't want to ignore her, but I let it ring out anyway. I knew she meant well, but I couldn't bring myself to talk. I didn't want to hear the usual questions about whether I'd eaten or gone outside. Eventually, I got tired of whatever was playing and backed out to the menu. I wasn't really in the mood for anything, but I clicked on some random horror movie I'd never heard of. It was one of those generic ones with a grainy thumbnail. I figured I'd half watch it until I fell asleep. About 20 minutes in,
Do you ever watch horror movies when you fall asleep? Let me know in the comments below, because I don't. I think that would give me more anxiety than not. And it's kind of crazy to me how people watch scary stuff right before they go to bed. Like, I couldn't watch this stuff right before I go to bed. I actually used to watch it at night, and I was getting extreme anxiety and paranoia actually from watching Mr. Nightmare's videos for a while before I would go to bed at night, because I would think that someone would ring the doorbell at 9 or 10 at night, and it was really creeping me out. So let me know if you feel the same way.
I realized the movie was even worse than I expected. The audio was a mess. Every time someone talked, I had to turn the volume way up just to catch a word or two. And then the next sound effect would blast through the speakers and damn near rupture my eardrums. For whatever reason, though, I kept the movie on. I think it was just because I was too lazy to change it again. At some point, I started noticing this weird sound effect in the movie. It was this sharp, metallic clang, kind of like a pipe hitting concrete. It didn't match anything that was happening on the screen. No one was holding metal, and no one was in a warehouse or anything like that. It wasn't timed with the scares either. It would just show up every minute or so, like the director had accidentally looped it or something. Same exact sound, same volume, and same pitch. It was almost too consistent to be a coherent sound design choice. That, plus the fact that the rest of the audio was mixed so poorly, made me question how the movie had even made it to streaming platforms. The poor quality of the movie actually made it harder to turn off, partly because I was enjoying criticizing it, but also partly because I needed to see how something so terrible would play out. About halfway through, I got up to use the bathroom, and for whatever reason, I actually paused the movie instead of not caring enough about what was going on. When I got back and sat down, I grabbed the remote and hovered over the play button. But right as I was about to press it, I heard that sound again. That same sharp metallic clang, except this time the movie was paused. I froze for a second, just staring at the screen. No audio, no movement. The sound had been clear as day, and it had come from somewhere inside the house.
That would be pretty spooky, wouldn't it? To realize that the sound that you've been hearing the whole time wasn't actually coming from the movie, but instead inside your own house. How would you react in that situation? Would you go looking for the sound? Or would you get out of the house right away and go somewhere else?
That's when it clicked. It had never been part of the movie. I stayed completely still, trying to make sure I hadn't imagined it. I watched the paused screen and just listened, hoping my mind had just been playing trick on me. But then, about 45 seconds later, there it was again, the exact same clang. I didn't waste another second. I immediately jumped up, grabbed a knife from my desk, and started moving room to room, frantically checking every place someone could possibly be hiding. Every room in the house was clear, though. There was no one. In fact, there were no signs that anything was out of place either. But as I walked back up the stairs with my heart still pounding, I heard the clang again. It wasn't as loud this time, meaning it must have been coming from my room, where I had been watching the movie. But I had been sitting there the whole time, so that didn't make any sense. That's when it hit me. I had a few windows open. It was spring, and the weather had finally started warming up, so I'd gotten into the habit of cracking them in the evenings to let some air in. I started thinking maybe the sound wasn't coming from inside the house at all. Maybe it had been coming from right outside the house this whole time. I don't know why, but that thought scared me even more. I went over to the window and pushed the curtain aside just enough to get a look at the backyard, and there it was. One of the deck chairs was sitting out in the middle of the lawn, maybe 20 feet from the house. And standing next to the chair was a kid, a young kid. I couldn't really make out any of his facial features given that it was so dark out, but the silhouette was way too small to be an adult. It was 100% a little kid. He was holding what looked like a PVC pipe, which explained the noise I had been hearing. He must have seen me, because as soon as I looked out the window, he smacked the pipe against the chair. I instantly stepped away from the window and felt my body start filling with fear. I know it sounds silly that I was afraid of something like that, but I couldn't fathom what that kid was doing outside my house.
You know, kid or no kid, that would be a really unsettling sight, wouldn't it? Just to have some adult kid like that, whatever that means, whether it's 16, 17, 18 years old, that would be really terrifying. And how would you handle that? Because I think that I would call the cops, because that's really not a cool situation to find yourself in. And that would be really creepy.
Did he have some kind of mental disorder? It didn't make sense. And then I thought about the fact that he must have been standing out there for nearly an hour, which freaked me out even more. I tried to slow my breathing and think rationally. Maybe the kid was lost. Maybe he had wandered off from a nearby house and didn't know how to get back. I told myself I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. So I went down the stairs and made my way through the house toward the back door, trying to keep calm. I even turned on the porch light, thinking it might help the kid feel less spooked, or at least give me a better look at him. As I was turning the doorknob, I froze. Something about it felt wrong, like I was walking into some kind of trap. If that kid were really lost, wouldn't he ring my doorbell or call out to me through my window? And even if he were too scared to, and ultimately decided that banging a pipe against one of my chairs was the best option, would he really stick to that strategy after a whole hour? It was insane. Something in my gut told me not to go outside, so I slowly backed away from the door. I crept over to a small window just left of the door, one that overlooked the porch and part of the backyard. I kept the light off behind me, slowly tilted the blind with 2 fingers, just enough to see through without drawing attention, and there they were. There were 2 men wearing all black, crouching below my back door, as if ready to ambush me the second I opened it. I must have stared too long, because one of the men suddenly turned his head and locked eyes with me through the glass. I dropped the blinds and instantly dialed 911. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard banging on the back door. Those guys were trying to break in. I sprinted to my bathroom and locked the door. By that point, I was having a full-on panic attack. I felt like I couldn't move. I was struggling to breathe, honestly. Shortly after I got to the bathroom, I heard a crash from downstairs, followed by the sound of footsteps walking around below me. Those people were in my house. I heard a set of footsteps walking up the stairs. I held my breath as they made their way down the hall. I saw the bathroom doorknob turn ever so slightly, followed by a loud bang, like they were trying to kick the door down. That made me lose it. I yelled at the top of my lungs that the police were on their way. The person on the other side of the door instantly ran back down the stairs. A few seconds later, I heard one of the doors slam, then silence. The police arrived shortly after that, and I told them everything. There wasn't much they could do. I didn't have any cameras, and I wasn't even able to give them any valuable information. The one thing that made them take things a little more seriously was the fact that there was a child involved. According to the police, that kind of involvement suggested whoever these guys were, they weren't just impulsive criminals. They were willing to go way further. That was the scariest part for me, too. I don't like thinking about the poor kid's involvement in the whole thing. Every explanation I came up with is equally sickening. The police told me I was likely the target of a random attack, but the whole scheme was just way too elaborate, in my opinion. Nothing has happened since, though, and I've since moved on with my life. I just really hope that kid is somehow safe, even though I know the odds are slim.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy story, isn't it? And the fact that they actually broke in like that shows how aggressive those people actually were. And to use a kid to make that elaborate scheme, that's pretty sick in itself. So those guys were clearly mentally unhinged. And that's why whenever you see something like that, like someone lurking in your backyard, don't ever open the door, because most of the time, probably like at least 95% of the time, it's a trap. And you just don't want to walk into a trap like that, ever. So definitely learn from these stories and take the necessary precautions if you ever come across anything like this. But yeah, I thought this was definitely a creepy story, and it is really scary that they actually broke into the house, because yeah, maybe he should have just gotten in his car and drove off. But yeah, I thought this was definitely a creepy story, and I hope you enjoyed my commentary and the music. And be sure to check the money-saving opportunity that I have in the pinned comment. It will help you save on car insurance and groceries and food and all that good stuff. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.